Of all the stories you believe you know, of all the sacred histories etched into the stone and parchment of human memory, there is one that lies buried deepest, a foundational narrative so profoundly unsettling that later generations chose to obscure it, to let it fade into the realm of myth. It is a story that explains the true, terrifying genesis of the evil that has coiled itself around the heart of humanity for millennia. You have been taught that our fall from grace began with a simple act of disobedience, forbidden fruit, a whispering serpent, a garden lost. But what if I told you that was merely the prologue? What if I told you that the first and most catastrophic corruption of mankind was an act of cosmic treason, a rebellion that came not from below but from above, a deliberate poisoning of our world by the very celestial beings meant to protect it? This is the history of the Watchers, an account of divine dereliction, of forbidden knowledge willingly given, and of the monstrous, bloodthirsty offspring that brought the world to the very precipice of utter annihilation. This is the story that the Book of Genesis only hints at in a single cryptic verse, but which is laid bare in the ancient, haunting, and often feared pages of the Book of Enoch. My name is Enoch, the seventh patriarch from Adam, the one who walked with God and was taken from the earth without tasting death. I was chosen for a task no mortal should ever have to bear, to be the scribe of judgment, the messenger of flesh and blood sent to immortal beings who had committed the ultimate, world-shattering sin. I implore you to stay with me, to listen with an open heart and a discerning mind, for what you are about to hear is not merely a forgotten tale from a lost age. It is the master key, the cipher that unlocks the very nature of the darkness that whispers in our modern world, the source of the shadows that lengthen in our own time. In that forgotten epoch, the antediluvian age, the world was young and humanity was a vibrant, burgeoning force. The children of Adam and Eve multiplied upon the face of the earth, their laughter echoing in valleys yet unnamed, their innocence still a fragile shield against the unknown. Above them, in the boundless expanse of the heavens, a divine order was immaculate and absolute. The celestial host served the Most High, and a special legion among them, the Watchers, were given a unique and sacred duty. They were the sentinels of creation, stationed on the holy peak of Mount Hermon, a silent, powerful garrison whose task was to look over the fledgling human race. They were to be guides, protectors from afar, their luminous presence a testament to the order of the cosmos. But they were forbidden from one thing above all else: interference. They were to watch, but never to touch. For ages they fulfilled their duty. From their celestial perch, they observed the unfolding drama of human life. They saw the first cities rise, the first fields tilled, the first songs sung. But proximity can breed a dangerous curiosity, and observation over untold years can curdle into a venomous desire. They watched the daughters of men, and they saw that they were beautiful. This was not a holy appreciation of God's handiwork. It was a fire, a lust entirely foreign and abhorrent to their spiritual nature that began to smolder within their immortal hearts. It was a thought that should have been impossible, a transgression that violated the most fundamental laws of creation, for spirit was never meant to mingle with flesh in such a way. This simmering corruption found its voice in their leader, their chief, an archon of great power named Samyaza. He looked upon his brethren, the 200 most powerful angelic governors under his command, and he saw the same illicit fire burning in their luminous eyes. He knew their hearts lusted as his did, but he also felt the cold dread of accountability. He feared being the sole bearer of the guilt for a sin of such magnitude. And so, on the windswept summit of Mount Hermon, he gathered them, his captains and lieutenants, and proposed a conspiracy that would forever shatter the destiny of both heaven and earth. His voice, once a tone in the celestial choir, was now a seductive, venomous whisper against the sacred silence. "Come," he proposed, "let us go down. Let us choose for ourselves wives from among the children of men, and let us beget children with them." The proposal hung in the rarefied air, a blasphemy of breathtaking arrogance. The other watchers recoiled, not in horror, but in a shared, guilty thrill. They understood the gravity of this transgression. They knew it was a defilement of their holy nature, an abandonment of their eternal station for a fleeting carnal pleasure. The chasm between the spiritual and the material was a law written by God himself, and they were contemplating a leap across it. But the allure, the magnetic pull of this new, forbidden experience was too powerful to resist. Samyaza, a master of manipulation, sensed their wavering. He saw their desire warring with their fear, and he laid a masterful trap to ensure their complete complicity. He raised his voice and declared, "I fear you will not indeed agree to do this deed, and I alone shall have to pay the penalty of a great sin. If you are unwilling, then so be it. But if you are, you must all swear a binding oath. Swear by imprecations upon yourselves that none of you shall turn back from this plan, but that we will all commit this act as one." It was a pact of mutual damnation. By swearing the oath, they would share the guilt equally. No single angel could be blamed. They would stand or fall together, and so they did. In that moment, a shadow fell over the sacred mountain. The 200 watchers, the celestial sentinels, bound themselves with curses, a solemn and terrible oath that sealed their fate and the fate of the world below. Mount Hermon, whose name means the forbidden place, became forever true to its name, the site of their cosmic treason. They swore allegiance not to the Most High, but to their shared burning lust. The leaders of this rebellion, captains of this damned host, included names that would become legendary symbols of corruption: Azazel, the armorer of sin; Barakijal, the seer of stars; Kokabel, the master of constellations; Tamiel, the teacher of signs, and a dozen others, each a commander of 10. They forsook their heavenly abode, their robes of light, their positions of eternal honor. They abandoned their sacred charge for the daughters of men, and in a cascade of falling light, they descended. They came upon the earth not as guardians, but as predators. They took for themselves wives, whomever they chose, and they lay with them, teaching them the ways of sin and seduction. And from this unholy, impossible union, a new race was born. They were not human, and they were not angelic. They were a monstrous hybrid, a genetic blasphemy that walked the earth in defiance of God's law. They were the Nephilim. The Book of Enoch calls them, simply, the giants, and their birth signaled the beginning of the end for the old world. They were beings of immense, terrifying stature, towering over mortal men as trees over shrubs. Their strength was a thing of legend, matched only by their utterly insatiable hunger. At first, humanity, awestruck and terrified, tried to sustain them. They gave the giants their grain, their livestock, their wine-all, the toil of their hands, the fruits of their labor, went to feed these ravenous demigods. But the Nephilim's hunger was a bottomless, gnawing pit. They were a black hole of consumption. They devoured everything humanity had produced, and when the granaries were empty and the fields were barren, their true, horrific nature was finally revealed. They turned their voracious appetites upon their creators. They began to hunt and devour men, women, and children. The cries of agony and terror that had once been sporadic now became the constant soundtrack of the world. Their violence knew no limits and no reason. When they had their fill of human flesh, their bloodlust drove them to turn on each other, drinking blood from the veins of their brethren and tearing limb from limb in a grotesque, cannibalistic frenzy. They sinned against the birds of the sky, the beasts of the field, the creeping things of the earth, and the fish of the sea, disrupting the entire, delicate balance of God's creation. The world buckled and groaned under the weight of their abominable lawlessness, but the physical destruction they wrought, as apocalyptic as it was only a fraction of the true crime. The lasting spiritual corruption came from the forbidden knowledge their watcher fathers brought down from heaven as a dowry for their stolen brides. This was not a simple, impulsive act of lust. It was a deliberate, systematic, and malicious poisoning of the human soul. Each of the fallen leaders became a dark professor, teaching humanity a specific, corrupting art, a gift that was, in reality, a soul-destroying curse. It was the watcher named Azazel who bore the greatest guilt, the one who took it upon himself to engineer humanity's fall into materialism, violence, and vanity. His corruption was the most profound and multifaceted. He saw the strength in men's arms and taught them the art of metallurgy. But this was not for the forging of plows or building tools. It was for the crafting of instruments of war. He showed them how to mine the earth, extract the iron and bronze, and shape it into swords, daggers, shields, and breastplates. Before Azazel, human conflict was primitive. He professionalized it. He gave men the means to kill each other with brutal efficiency, turning tribal squabbles into organized, bloody warfare. The earth, which had known only spilt blood, was now drenched in it, all thanks to this single, terrible gift. But Azazel's evil genius didn't stop at violence. He understood that vanity was a subtle but powerful gateway to sin, a path to making humanity forget their inherent worth in the eyes of God, and instead value only the superficial. He went to the women and taught them the art of deception. He showed them how to craft bracelets and fine ornaments from the metals he had taught the men to mine. He revealed the secrets of cosmetics, teaching them how to use antimony to beautify their eyelids and paint their faces. This was not about enhancing beauty. It was about creating an illusion, a mask. It taught humanity to value the external shell over the internal soul, the painted facade over the purity of the heart. To fuel this new obsession, he also revealed the secrets of precious stones, diamonds, emeralds, sapphire sand, the chemical processes for creating coloring tinctures. This ignited a burning lust for material wealth and luxury that would drive men to greed, envy, slavery, and oppression. In a few short generations, Azazel single-handedly introduced organized warfare, vanity, materialism, and systemic greed to the human race. He had given humanity all the tools it needed to destroy itself. The other leaders followed his example, each bringing their own unique poisons to the banquet of sin. Samyaza, their chief, taught the arts of sorcery and the cutting of roots for magical purposes. He showed humans how to brew potions and cast enchantments, seeking to bend the laws of nature to their own will, bypassing the authority and providence of God. Barakijal, an angel who understood the heavens, revealed the profane secrets of astrology, teaching men to seek guidance and destiny from the movement of stars rather than from their creator. This fostered a sense of fatalism, absolving humans of moral responsibility. Kokabel, a master of cosmic patterns, unveiled the mysteries of the constellations, turning the holy science of astronomy into a tool for idolatry and pagan worship as men began to name the stars and bow down to them. Tamil taught the signs of the sun and Azradel the motion of the moon. Knowledge that, in the hands of a corrupted and fearful humanity, became the foundation for sun and moon worship, for pagan calendars and bloody rituals. Every piece of knowledge was a perversion. Every secret of heaven was twisted into a weapon against the human soul. This was the true Pandora's box, and the watchers had gleefully thrown it wide open, laughing as humanity scrambled for the curses within. The world itself began to die. The very ground, soaked with the blood of the slain and the innocent, cried out. The souls of the dead, unjustly murdered, ascended to the gates of heaven, their silent screams forming a chorus of accusation before the throne of God. And the earth, defiled, broken, and ravaged, laid her own formal accusation before the Most High. The four holy archangels, Michael, the commander, Uriel, the light of God, Raphael, the healer, and Gabriel, the strength of God, looked down from the bulwarks of heaven and saw the unmitigated carnage. They saw the rivers choked with blood, the mountains of rotting corpses, the rampant lawlessness, and the dark web of sorcery that had entangled the entire globe. Their immortal hearts were filled with a righteous and profound sorrow, and they resolved to bring the case of humanity before the Lord of Ages. They ascended to the highest heaven, their voices joining as one in a plea of cosmic urgency. "You see what Azazel has done," they began, their voices resonating with the grief of creation. You see how he has taught all unrighteousness on earth and revealed the eternal secrets which were made in heaven, which men were striving to learn. And Samyaza, to whom you gave authority to rule over his companions, has taught them all enchantments. And see how they have gone to the daughters of men on the earth, and have slept with them, and have defiled themselves, and have revealed to them all kinds of sins. And the women have borne great giants, and the whole earth has thereby been filled with blood and unrighteousness. And now, behold, the souls of those who have died are crying and making their suit to the gates of heaven, and their groans have ascended. They cannot cease because of the lawless deeds which are wrought on the earth. You know all things before they come to pass. You see these things and you suffer them, and do not tell us what we ought to do to them in regard to this. The silence that followed their plea was the silence of impending cosmic judgment. Then the voice of the Most High, the Holy and Great One, spoke from the throne of light. The verdict was delivered, it was swift, it was absolute, and it was terrible beyond mortal comprehension. God's plan was not just to punish, but to cleanse, to cauterize, and to restore. Each of the 4 archangels was given a specific, holy, and fearsome mission. First, the Lord spoke to Uriel, the angel of light and holy knowledge. Go to the son of Lamech, he commanded, his voice the sound of worlds turning, and say to him in my name, hide yourself, and reveal to him the end that is approaching, that the whole earth will be destroyed, and a deluge is about to come upon the whole earth, and will destroy all that is on it. This was the first divine warning given to the man Noah. Here, the story of Enoch was being woven directly and inextricably into the fabric of the canonical book of Genesis. The Great Flood was not a random act of divine rage at human sin alone. It was the direct and necessary surgical procedure to cleanse the world of the Watcher's deeper corruption of the Nephilim's blood, their demonic spirits, and Azazel's forbidden arts. Next, the Lord turned to Raphael, the angel whose very name means God heals. But his first task was not to heal, but to perform a terrible binding. Bind Azazel hand and foot, the Lord commanded, and cast him into the darkness. Make an opening in the desert, which is in Dudael, and cast him therein, and place upon him rough and jagged rocks, and cover him with darkness, and let him abide there forever, and cover his face that he may not see light. And on the day of the great judgment he shall be cast into the fire to be consumed. The punishment was a symphony of perfect, poetic justice. The one who taught humanity to love the glittering surfaces of gems and polished metals was condemned to an eternity in a world without light. The one who armed men with shining swords was bound in unbreakable chains. The one who revealed the secrets of heaven was cast into a pit, his face covered so that he could never again look upon the works of God he had so eagerly defiled. He was to be made an example, a living monument to the ultimate fate of rebellion. Then God spoke to Gabriel, the angel of divine strength. His task was one of grim celestial irony. Proceed against the bastards and the reprobates, and against the children of fornication, God instructed, and destroy the children of the watchers from amongst men. Send them one against the other, that they may destroy each other in battle, for length of days shall they not have. The Nephilim, born of violence and living for destruction, would now become the divine instruments of their own demise. God would turn their insatiable bloodlust inward, fanning the flames of their rage until they saw only enemies in their own kind. The earth would shake with the war of the giants, a self-consuming holocaust that would leave none of them standing. Finally, the Most High gave his ultimate command to Michael, the captain of the Lord's host, the one who stands for the people of God. Go, bind Samyaza and his associates, who have united themselves with women so as to have defiled themselves with them in all their uncleanness. And when their sons have slain one another, and they have seen the destruction of their beloved ones, bind them fast for 70 generations in the valleys of the earth, until the day of their judgment and of their consummation, until the judgment that is forever and ever is consummated. Their punishment was to be a long, slow imprisonment. They were to be held in darkness deep beneath the surface of the earth, forced to witness the long, agonizing unfolding of human history. knowing they had corrupted it but were powerless to intervene further. Their sentence would last until the final day of judgment, when they, along with their chief of corruption, Azazel, would be cast into the eternal cleansing fire. But what of the spirits of the giants they had sired? This is perhaps the most chilling and critically important part of the judgment, a revelation that explains so much of the unseen suffering that would follow for millennia. God declared that when the Nephilim were slain, their bodies of flesh would perish and decay. But their spirits, born of immortal fathers and mortal mothers, were a hybrid entity that belonged nowhere. They could not ascend to heaven, for they were defiled by the flesh and born of sin. They could not find rest in the earth, for they were not fully human. So they were cursed to remain on the earth as wandering, malignant, disembodied spirits. And now, the giants, who are produced from the spirits and flesh, shall be called evil spirits upon the earth, and on the earth shall be their dwelling, God decreed. Evil spirits have proceeded from their bodies, because they are born from men, and from the holy watchers is their beginning and primal origin. They shall be evil spirits on earth, and evil spirits shall they be called. And the spirits of the giants will afflict, oppress, destroy, attack, do battle, and work destruction on the earth, and they shall cause trouble. They take no food, but nevertheless hunger and thirst, and cause offenses. And these spirits shall rise up against the children of men and against the women, because they have proceeded from them. Here, in these terrifying verses from the Book of Enoch, is the true, explicit origin of what humanity would come to call demons. They are not fallen angels in the way the Watchers are. They are the lingering, restless ghosts of the Nephilim. They are the tormented and tormenting spirits whose sole purpose is to plague mankind, to drive them to madness, to incite them to sin, and to continue the destructive, corrupting work of their fallen fathers. Every act of demonic oppression, every whisper of dark temptation, every shadow of spiritual warfare that flickers at the edge of our perception can be traced back to this single, terrible curse born from the Watcher's unholy lust. This is the point where I, Enoch, was drawn from my quiet walk with God and thrust into the heart of this cosmic drama. As the judgments were being decreed, God called to me. He gave me the title Scribe of Righteousness and sent me on the most terrifying mission a mortal could ever undertake. He commanded me to go to the fallen Watchers and be the one to deliver their final, unalterable sentence. I journeyed to the place of their desolate gathering, and what I saw was not the defiant pride I might have expected, but abject, soul-crushing terror. They were huddled together, weeping, their once luminous forms now dimmed, their faces covered in shame and despair. The mighty angels who had arrogantly defied heaven were now trembling like frightened, lost children. They had seen the vision of their giant sons slaughtering one another in a blood-soaked apocalypse, and they knew their doom was sealed. When they saw me, a mere mortal, a man of frail flesh and blood, walking among them, they were filled with a supernatural dread that shook the very foundations of the earth. They fell before me, begging, "Enoch, scribe of righteousness," they pleaded, their voices choked with an eternity of regret. "Go and petition the Lord of heaven for us, that we might find forgiveness, that we might find peace." They, who were immortal, who had once stood in the presence of God, could no longer speak to him directly. Their sin had created a chasm so vast it could not be crossed. They had to ask me, a human, to be their intercessor. Out of a sense of duty, I did as they asked. I wrote down their petition, a long prayer filled with their sorrow, their grief, and their desperate plea for mercy. I then traveled to the waters of Dan, in the land south of Mount Hermon, the very place where their sin had been conceived. I sat down by the water's edge and read their petition aloud to the heavens. And as the last word left my lips, a deep sleep came over me, and a vision of judgment descended upon me. In the vision, I was brought before the very throne of God. It was a house of crystal, its ceiling like the path of stars, its floor of living fire. I saw the great glory seated upon the throne, and he spoke to me. But his words were not of mercy. They were of immutable, eternal, and righteous judgment. He said to me with a voice that was both thunder and sorrow, "Go, Say to the watchers of heaven who have sent you to intercede for them, you should intercede for men, and not men for you. Why have you left the high, holy, and eternal heaven, and lain with women, and defiled yourselves with the daughters of men, and taken to yourselves wives, and done like the children of earth, and begotten giants as your sons? You, who were holy, spiritual, living the eternal life, have now defiled yourselves with the blood of women, and have begotten children with the blood of flesh, and have lusted after the flesh of men, and have produced flesh and blood as those do who die and perish. Therefore there shall be no peace for you, nor forgiveness of sin. The vision ended. I awoke with the weight of God's final, irrevocable verdict heavy on my soul. I returned to the place of the fallen watchers and found them assembled, weeping. I stood before them, my mortal form a stark contrast to their faded glory, and I looked specifically at their great corrupter, Azazel. I recounted the vision in its entirety. I spoke every word of judgment that God had given me. I told them their petition was denied, that their damnation was sealed, that they would be bound and cast into darkness, and that they would never, ever find peace. The silence that followed was the sound of all hope dying for eternity. This story, my story, is a warning that must echo through the ages. It reveals that the roots of evil in our world are deeper, more ancient, and more deliberate than we can easily imagine. It wasn't just a simple act of disobedience in a garden. It was a calculated, cosmic rebellion designed to corrupt the entirety of creation. The forbidden knowledge given by the Watcher's weaponry, sorcery, vanity, materialism, greed, the very pillars upon which corrupt human societies have been built ever since. The echoes of Azazel's dark teachings are all around us. In our endless wars, our obsession with fleeting physical beauty, our insatiable desire for wealth, and our willingness to sacrifice our souls for temporary power, the spirits they unleashed, the disembodied ghosts of the Nephilim that we call demons, continue their destructive work to this very day. They whisper the same lies, they incite the same sins, and they delight in the same human destruction. They are the unseen forces behind so much of the world's pain, the spiritual reality that so many in the modern age refuse to see. The question then that this ancient text poses to you now is, what do we do with this terrifying knowledge? Is the Book of Enoch a literal history of our ancient past, a memory that we have collectively suppressed? Is it a profound allegory, a cautionary tale about the grave dangers of power without wisdom and knowledge without righteousness? Or is it a prophetic blueprint, revealing the true nature of the spiritual war that rages around us and within us at every moment? I leave you with that question to ponder. What do you think? Look at the world around you, at the headlines that dominate our news, at the moral decay that seems to encroach from every side. Do you see the long shadow of the watchers? Do you hear the faint, destructive whispers of the spirits they left behind? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. If this story, hidden for millennia from the mainstream, has opened your eyes to a deeper truth about the world we inhabit, then give this message a like and share it with others. By doing so, you help bring this forbidden knowledge into the light, not as a tool for corruption as the Watchers intended, but as a weapon for understanding and vigilance. It lets us know that you are ready to explore the deeper, often hidden truths that truly shape our reality. And if you believe this account of the fall of angels and the birth of demons is shocking, you cannot begin to imagine what I was shown next. For after delivering God's judgment, I was taken from the earth and brought on a journey through the 7 heavens, to the very throne room of God itself, where I was shown the secrets of creation, the storehouses of righteousness, the chambers of sin, and the final, fiery destiny of all things. But that, my friends, is a story for another time. For now, remember the Watchers, and be vigilant.